Hi, I'm Patricia Greenberg, and this is Eat Well, Live Well, Age Well, a show about all things aging well. Well, today I have a very special episode. We're doing a crossover with Women Beyond a Certain Age, starring Denise Vivaldo and Cindie Flannigan. These girls are old friends of mine, and all we talk about is not just aging well, but aging together as a team, as a family, as a posse. And my new mantra is instead of aging gracefully, let's try to age peacefully.
Oh, I love that. But we're talking about a really big issue in women beyond a certain age groups. We have to sometimes clean out our parents' home when they've passed on. Cindie, by the way, well, Cindie will tell her story, but Cindy's in the middle of this because her dad recently passed away. And it's a tough subject, but it's something I think that if you've done it, we might be able to share some insights with other people.
Yeah, Cindie, I'm looking forward to hearing your story. And I think all three of us can chime in because there's dealing with the passing of the person. There's dealing with the cleaning out of their things, and that runs the whole gamut from a clean, organized home where they had everything in order to something out of a horror movie that you can't even get in the front door and everything in between. And the emotions that come with that to me is what is the most devastating part. We all know we're not going to be here forever, and we all know that we're ultimately going to lose our parents. But we're not always prepared for the stuff surrounding that it isn't always a clean break.
Yes.
Oh, the stuff surrounding the oh, the stuff. Well, my dad was sick for a while, and I'm living with my mom, and I was living with both of them while he was sick, and before he was sick too. And I think that gave me, well, both of us a lot of time to get used to the fact that we were saying goodbye to him.
Yes.
It was a blessing when he went. He was really, he had cancer, and it's a horrible thing to watch somebody go through. And we did get to have him at home for the last few days. So it felt, uh, I don't know what closure means for different kind of situations, but I did feel like we had some there. Uh, but his stuff, we've been making fun of him for his stuff for a long time. He was the most organized hoarder on earth. He kept everything out of sight, up in the attic, in cupboards, in his garage, all organized in boxes and labeled.
Let me ask you something. When he was alive, did he monitor his inventory? Because we tried to sneak behind my parents' back. Isn't this terrible? When they were ill and we saw the handwriting on the wall, what can we get rid of now that they won't notice so we don't have a nightmare on our hands when they do go?
We didn't try doing that when he was real sick. We tried doing that before. For example, he had a treadmill that was out on the back deck, and it was a covered deck, so it was pretty safe there. Uh, it didn't work. It hadn't worked for years, but he paid a couple $1,000s for it. So that's what it was worth to him in his mind. And I somehow convinced him to get rid of it. And there's a guy that picks stuff up. If you put it out in your alley, he'll pick stuff up it has lots of metal in it because he recycles scrap metal. Well, I thought somebody had picked it up because it wasn't there anymore. He pushed it behind the garage when I wasn't looking.
Ah, wow.
Now,
He wasn't ready yet. He said he was, but he wasn't.
Yeah.
I have to say this, Cindie, I'm so proud. Many times, Cindie and I, she would come into the office and she'd say something like, "My dad has a tandem bike, okay, that he and my mother have not ridden for 2 or 3 years. And I'm going to try to convince
20 or 30.
yeah, okay, 20 or 30 years. But I'm going to try to convince him. I'm going to put it, whatever, in any of the places for sale.
Right.
And she sounded so firm and she was so smart and it was such a good idea. And then she'd say, well, I don't think the bike's going to sell because my father paid $3,200 for it 20 years ago and he still wants $3,200 for it. So in Wally's mind, which I totally get, okay, it was still worth what he paid for it. And so that's why he couldn't let go of that stuff.
Well, I'll tell you, ladies, this is a very serious issue. This is
Yes.
what we do when we go through our things. Oh, I paid so much for that. I can't possibly throw it out. So that, kind of brings me to, this is very fresh in your mind, Cindie. I'm about 8 years out of our last clean out of my parents' house. And they were very, to their credit, their funeral arrangements, everything was in place, and the house was pretty clean and pretty orderly. So my mother died in 2010, my father died in 2014. So by that time, when my mother died, I actually went and packed everything, labeled it, and I brought it to the one of those women's organizations that provide that they collect clothing for women who are re-entering the work world or in a shelter. So we put that to good use. So I do want to talk about that. How do you rip that away from somebody when they have that monetary attachment, especially that generation, because they're, they lived in a time where $3,200 is a lot of money.
Yes.
Well, there would
A lot of money to me, but
Yeah,
nowadays you can buy a treadmill for 10 grand. You pay $14 for a Starbucks coffee. But in their generation, those are very valuable items. So,
Yeah.
what
We
do
didn't.
we do?
We did not. We did not try to get to convince him that those things had to go. We did after he passed. Um, so my mom said somebody asked her how long she's waited, or has he passed away on on April 29th. And somebody asked her just a few weeks ago if she had started going through his clothes yet. And she said, I started going through those clothes the next day. I don't know. We just did. We
good for
started going
him.
through everything. And it has taken, probably 4 times through to feel like we did go through nearly all of it. And we had some stuff that we couldn't get rid of that first time through. It had to be the second or the third or the fourth time through, because we were still, I guess, Marie Kondoing it. We were still
Yes,
looking at
yes,
it.
right.
And some things, they were real special to him. He was a huge bike rider, and he did ultra marathons. And the amount of bicycle stuff he had, we actually found one of his old bicycle riding buddies who's 90 years old now, and he collects all kinds of old bicycle parts and frames and seats and anything to do with bicycles. And people use him as a clearinghouse to find old parts that they can't find anywhere else. So we felt really good giving him all of my dad's stuff, because it would go to all of the people that, still love those old bicycles and want to keep riding them. So that was nice. That felt good to us.
That's amazing. It's like you're rehoming and repurposing items that you don't feel like. Because, my question is like, what do we keep and what do we discard? And the practical answer is we get rid of everything. What do you possibly need another thing in your house for?
And
But
it's
the
a thing.
emotion attached to that is so profound. Denise, what was your experience when you heard?
My mother called her last house the cottage. It was 3,500 square feet.
Oh,
Okay. But here's the thing, and I can make it short. My mother loved to shop. My father was a real estate broker. They bought a house. She turned it into a show place. They sold it. she'd move on to the next house. She used to say, as we got older, she'd say, if you girls weren't attached to me, you could go with the house. Okay.
Yeah.
Because she would, seriously, you might have loved your canopy bed that I had in high school. And in the next house, my mother sold it. And I got to the new house, seriously, drove in my car as a teenager to the house, and I had a whole new bedroom set.
Oh my
And I
goodness.
would say things like, Mom, I really liked the last bedroom. She said, oh, that was old. I got a fortune for that, honey. And we would move on. So though my mother loved stuff, do you know what I mean? When
Hmm.
she passed away, in the bad news and the good news, we had to break down the cottage, but Pat, she hadn't died yet. She'd gone into an Alzheimer unit. Now, typical of my oldest sister, we were all executives in it. My oldest sister says, well, we can't give any of mother's stuff away yet because if she wakes up and wants it back, she could sue us. Now, this is again, we won't talk about the family dynamics here. Never mind. I kept saying, as my poor mother was now pooping in her pants and wanted to eat birthday cake for breakfast, she wasn't going to wake up. So we broke down her house and had to move it all into a storage unit to keep every single piece. So by the time then she passed, we set up a pretty room in the Alzheimer unit with her things, so she would, know they were there. Though she was only looking for the birthday cake. And so then we put it all in the thing. By the time we broke that unit down again, I need to tell you something. We realized we could all let go of this stuff. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? And we did what you did. Most of her gorgeous clothes went to a hospice spot, and her furniture we gave it to friends. Do you know what I mean? Literally, we opened up the garage door, and all her neighbors that she'd had for 20 years, we said, would you like this? Would you like this? We gave stuff away. We gave her collections of expensive porcelain that, of course, none of us wanted,
Right.
to the nurses that took care of her. So we we did the best we could. Do you know what I mean? But speaking to your point, I kept two or three pieces of furniture that I still have in my house now. Do you know what I mean? I didn't keep all of it. When we moved here to Ventura and we downsized, no, I got rid of some of it. But there are two or three pieces that I have that were my mother's that I'm so glad I have because I love them. And I know it would make her happy that I have them. But Cindie knows this. At first, I took too much stuff from my mother's estate. Okay. I took too much stuff. Then when I went on a bender in my own house of cleaning out, her stuff was for sale on the lawn and for a garage sale that I was holding. And that helped me a lot. And it helped me a lot in my growth with my own stuff. I thought all our prized possessions end up in someone's garage sale.
Well, we had a very interesting experience. I have a house, and my siblings live in New York City. My two sisters live in apartments. My brother lives in an apartment in Chicago, and my other brother lived in a house 10 minutes from my parents, full of furniture. And I have a house in LA. I said, okay, I'll take it. So I brought it back. So then I have 5 couches in the living room, dishes, wine glasses galore. And what I did was I said, okay, I have a beautiful coffee table. The reality is nobody wants it. None of our children are going to want it. So I did actually donate some to Goodwill. I still have my parents' beautiful deco couch from the 50s. And, this is where I felt like, I sat down and I deep down, what am I really going to use? I took my father's luggage tag and I put it on my briefcase, so I always have it with me. And I took a keychain from my mother's first trip to Hawaii. She was so excited. And I took the keychain and I put it on my spare house keys. They're tiny, tiny mementos with huge impact. So I know they're here and I'm happy about it, but I'm not bogged down with tons of things. What I wanted to also talk about is, we want mementos from our parents. Even in contentious relationships, we never want to get rid of everything completely. Um, but what are you entitled to in relationship to other people? Like Cindie, in your case, your mother's still alive. Denise, in our cases, the last parent went, and then you just have to either distribute through siblings or throw it out, or, you know,
again,
What do you do with that? Well, emotionally, what do you do with that? It's like the person's gone.
yeah.
When my father died, it was the second parent, and I felt like I was falling backwards off a cliff 90 miles an hour. It's like the
Oh,
safety net was gone.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
There's no
there's
place to go
something,
home to.
there's
Your home
no
is gone.
home. There's no home anymore. That's exactly right.
So I never lived in my mother's house, and I want Cindie because Cindy's really in a really in it
Right.
at the moment. But I just want to say this. So my sister, again, my sister, the banker who thinks will be sued by my dementia, my poor Alzheimer mother. My sister, but it was a smart thing to do. We made a list.
Mhm.
Okay, we made a 3-column list. I was taking this, Anne was taking this, Joan was taking this. And on many of the things, not stupid, not tea towels or something, but we put a value on it. If somebody wanted that gold watch, well, that was $8,000. We put a value on it. Now, we did that because we could each look and keep it fair. Do you know what I mean? And I had 2 sisters that didn't want, not nearly as sentimental as me. They didn't want any of it.
Right.
Okay, like I wanted my mother's china. I wanted this. But this is the only thing. And then Cindie, you answered this. This is my favorite, and talk about the emotions of it. I never lived in the house my mother was in at the end. Okay.
Right.
But I felt like it was when we finally sold it, when she was dead. I'm there and I'm alone now. My sisters and I, just want to say that we divided up so much of the work. We each took things to do so that one
Right.
person wasn't stuck. So I was the last man standing at that moment. But are you ready for this? And talk about hysterical. The people have now bought the cottage. And I'm at there still organizing things, and the new owners walked in. My mother had a gorgeous mountain view and these drapes that she'd spent, I don't know. You remember when people used to spend
Oh, sure.
$1,000 on drapes?
Uh-huh.
These silk, this drapes, it was magnificent. Peak ceilings, huge, expanse against the wall. And the woman who's buying the unit says, God, those horrible drapes, they'll have to go. Now I need you to know, I was so offended.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
And here my beautiful little mother is dead, and these drapes, the place had been a showcase. I need you to know, not safe, not smart. I get on like a 12-foot ladder after 2 glasses of wine by myself. Thank God I didn't go through the window. And I'm pulling those drapes down like Scarlett O'Hara, because if they don't want them, they're not going to get them.
Right.
And balled them all up, gave them to the house, the hospice or whatever.
Right.
We gave a lot of stuff to Habitat for Humanity, and they remake things. But when I called my sisters crying to tell them that that horrible woman wasn't getting my mommy's beautiful drapes, they both said to me, "Don't drink any more wine, Denise." Don't have another glass of wine. And they said, "Are you safe now? Are you off the ladder?" I said, "Yes." But you know what? I can cry about it now. I'm thinking about it. That was the moment that I realized it was all over.
Right.
Okay, she was gone. The house would be gone. That only in my memories, that I would never see her again, nor, and that bitch wasn't getting my mother's drapes.
So we, my brother lived nearby. They retired in Arizona. So we have a friend who deals in antiques. And what happened was she had Stephen donate it to a center that people would buy it from. So it would be rehomed, but Stephen would get the tax deduction for it. So we had a player piano, if anybody even remembers what those were. And my husband kept saying, take it. I'm like, so we'll have 2 pianos in our house? Like, nobody could really take it and fit it. And that was one of it. But when we sold the house, we sold it very quickly. And the woman that took it was very gracious and wonderful and moved in. And then Stephen had left something. My brother Stephen, who lived nearby, had left something in the garage. I don't know if it was by accident or just missed a box or something. She calls him up and she said, "Mr. Greenberg, get your shit out of my garage. It's my house." And that to me was the line of demarcation. It was just a box in the corner, and it was no longer my father's house. And she just called up and said, "Get it out of here." And Stephen was devastated.
Devastated. I could have used him with helping to get the drapes down.
So
Yeah.
Cindy, you're having to do that, but you're still living in it. So how is that? Is everything a reminder?
Oh, well, it is because I lived in this house. My parents moved here when I was 1 year old,
Oh, wow.
and it was the house my grandpa grew up in. And so the house has been in the family for a really long time. And my dad has had a lot of time to squirrel away things. But I I've had to move so often before I moved back home. I think I moved uh, between the year 1999 and uh, when I moved in here 6 years ago. I think I moved 14 times.
Oh my goodness.
And I got really used to not hanging on to stuff and not getting emotionally attached to things. There are a couple places that I really love, like my apartment in San Francisco when I was going to cooking school. I love that place more than anything. But I just, you realize that once you leave it, uh, what you loved about it is it comes with you. It's not there anymore. It's not yours. When we end up selling this house, which will be pretty soon, it's going to be the first time this house wasn't in the family anymore. um, but the function of this house is to give us money to live on and to buy a new house.
Right.
And we're actually going to buy my sister's house from her.
Okay.
So that was my brother-in-law's grandma's house that we're going to.
Obviously, they really like the houses.
Everybody, yeah, you're really keeping it. Cindy, that is a beautiful thing that is a multi-generational attachment in a healthy way to things that you're not hanging on to stuff that's no longer serving you. You're actually working this in a very beautiful way to keep it in the family and keep everybody safe and happy and healthy and taken care of.
Right,
Going
because
forward. It's,
if we sell this house and we let emotions dictate who we sell it to, that doesn't work, because the person's going to turn around and go, not your house anymore, ass. Yeah, this is my house now, get out of here. That happened when we sold my grandparents' house to a woman who pretended to be very sweet and nice and wonderful and turned out to be the bane of all the neighbors' existence. So this house is going to serve us in a financial way going forward. It's not going to be anything emotional. We'll have our memories, we'll have our pictures, and it will be hard to leave, but at least we're going to be going someplace very familiar.
right.
And we're not going to be taking 8 billion screws and nails and washers and bolts and
Right.
Bicycle parts.
Right.
everything. We
Right.
did what Denise suggested we do, and we did also have a garage sale, but we took pictures of it before we donated it, before we sold it at the garage sale. When it was all spread out, we took pictures of it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and I think that helps. You sit there and think, why do I need scuba diving equipment from 48 years ago?
Right. Right.
It's the emotions, though, Pat, when you say that, and I
Yeah.
can just see your poor brother, when that woman said that to him, it must have broken his heart at that moment.
Terrible.
Yes.
There's the breaking, there is the point where you know that it's over. Do you know what I mean? Now, my sisters were much better at it than I was. I don't know why, but they, in picking and choosing, they would say, no, I don't. They didn't even look up, no, I don't want that. But it helped me my next time. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? So then when we had to move out of LA, I got better at it, because I realized, and Cindie just said it beautifully, I needed to move out of LA financially to get to my next spot
Right.
in life, because the houses in LA are worth, and Cindy's, family has been in that house forever. But how exciting is it going to be, Cindie, for you and Gail to have a new house?
Right. Right.
Yeah, it's like 6 of one, half a dozen of another here. So, and it helps so much to know the situation we will be going into.
Yes.
We already know everything about that house.
Yeah.
So there aren't any nasty surprises like you get when you buy a new house sometimes.
I have to say one other thing. When I, once in a while, and I don't know about you, Pat. Now, we just had to, I mean, I wanted to get rid of a lot of stuff from LA. And some of it were pieces that were my mother's. Okay. Some of them were pieces from Kenny's family.
Right.
So, what I tried to do was, I really would take my cup of coffee in the morning and go shopping in my own house. And
Right.
I put a post it on what I was going to keep. And then there were some things that I looked down and I said, I love you. My own Marie Kondo. I loved you so fucking much, pink chair. Goodbye. Oh, I shouldn't swear. Or thank you. Or a couple of pieces I said, oh, I spent way too much for you, but I'm going to still let you go. And it was easier for me. Do you know what I mean? It was so much easier because I realized that after my mother had died, I just didn't want her. It wasn't about the things that I took. I just wanted her to remember her the way she was.
Absolutely. And I want to say that, to the listening audience is that if I could tell you to kind of like pay attention to that now because you're going to be in shock and grief and horror when the time comes. I don't care how prepared you think you are. And it's something that this discussion needs to happen before with your parents. And if your parents are not capable of talking it with siblings or even with an estate planning lawyer, little FYI, something I'm doing now is going around the house and just seeing, like you say, maybe watches or jewelry that might be of some value. But I think you need to know what everything you have is worth. There may be something in the house that you can sell to an art dealer or an auction house. And it's not, I think it's worth exploring if you can get some money for things that nobody in the
Absolutely.
family is worth taking. And if you could just take that little effort, and now it's easy. I'm doing it now. We have some things in our house that are highly specialized. And so the auction house said to me, take pictures of it and send it to us, and we'll see if it's in the ballpark of something that's worth sending out an appraiser for. And so, that's what I'm looking at. This is an estate planning lawyer session, which we'll do at another time. But the other reason for knowing that too, if somebody's somewhere down, a cousin from Mars wants to come after you, or some kid comes along and said, I'm the illegitimate child of your father, you have everything on paper. So it's a little bit of work, but it's worth having. And if your parents aren't willing to have the conversation, have the conversation with yourself in terms of what you're going to do when it happens.
Siblings were a big issue, Pat. And
Siblings are a huge issue.
this is why Cindie buying her brother-in-law and sister's house, I mean, they're a unit. They're all working together. Do you know what I mean? Successfully, that it all worked for everyone. Because I have a friend right now who has 4 siblings, but his father needs to move into a facility and has lived in a house for almost 50 or 60 years. The wife's been dead for 20 or 30, has every newspaper that has been delivered. So he's at that end of the spectrum. So he's been living there for the last 4 months. All they've got done yet, they haven't even done dividing things up or selling it or what they'll take with them. They're just still throwing junk out.
Right.
But he sends me texts and he's the loveliest person and I love him, in case he heard this. But he keeps saying, don't talk to me about my siblings because they've obviously left it all to him. Because he's the single guy, so they're making him take care of everything.
Now, let me tell you something that it's an emotional issue as well as a legal issue, is that at what point are you entitled to more if you're taking care of? And I'm just asking you girls as an opinion.
Yeah.
In my family, there's 5 of us and everything went 5 ways. Everybody did contribute and everybody helped out. So we were lucky and we're very bonded that way. But there are families where the kids have nothing to do with their parents or siblings for years on end and then show up at the end. So that is something that you have to get on paper also. My opinion of that is that I think the siblings who have the most need should get it. I think that's a more proper distribution, that everything should be even 3 ways, 5 ways, 2 ways, depending on how many kids there are. But if one kid has more of a need and the relationship is okay and everybody's okay with it, maybe they can get cash out and get a little bit more. I mean, there's a million ways to skin that cat, obviously,
I
but
think,
it
yep,
has to be on paper. It has
it
to
is
be,
on paper.
yeah.
Kenny's family, Kenny's mother, Kenny's father had passed. Kenny's mother needed to be moved into a home. Huge home in Shaker Heights, you know, huge room after room after room. She still had the Boy Scouts uniforms hanging in their closets.
Oh my goodness.
And I said to her one day, Gigi, do you think the boys still can fit in those? I mean, now they're old men.
Right.
And they're everything. But here was the bottom line. Kenny's two brothers, and like him, all lived very far away. His sister lived a few blocks away. Well, who do you think did all the work at the end there? So the boys each flew back for several days, and they were able to take a few pieces of things that they wanted. But Gigi had made no bones about it, and she liked me. And Cindie will be amazed that I can say this now without bitterness and hostility. She had put in her will that Pat got her, his sister's name is Pat, got all the jewelry. And the reason for it was that she wanted it to go to her daughter.
Okay.
And when at first, but the boys grumbled about once or twice, but I would say to Kenny, Pat earned every piece of that, because for the last 10 years of her parents' life, she lived 2 blocks away and took care of them. My husband wasn't in Cleveland. His brothers weren't in Cleveland. So I think if people can be honest, unless there's a bad blood between brothers and sisters, if they talk it out, and yeah, even if they just write it out on a pad by themselves and I'll sign it. Do you know what I mean? And so that everybody's clear as to what's going on.
I just have to insert this here that this is hysterical with you guys talking about artwork and jewelry. There's nothing like that here, nothing. Nothing.
You have a point, Cindie. You have a point.
There's a house.
Yeah.
There's a house and a tandem. And my sister and brother-in-law, my dad had some, my brother won't hear this, so this is okay. My dad had my brother written out of getting anything. He's always been a problem. My dad was just completely, and my brother, they're very much alike. So they're both, not speaking to each other, nothing. And then he wanted to leave everything to my mom. He left everything to my mom. And when we were discussing all this with my dad and the estate lawyer, we agreed to have it all split between me and my sister, and then also to the grandkids later on. But when my dad passed away, we went back in with the lawyer and put my brother back in, because he is in need.
Cindie, that's really
is in need. But that's not going to happen unless something happens to me, or when something happens to my mom. Then I'm my sister and my brother-in-law, and I am in a very, very unique situation. They had a meeting with my mom and dad, and they said, Cindie is taking care of you. We don't want you to leave any of this to us. We want you to leave it to Cindie. Cindy's taking care of mom. She'll be in the house afterwards. She should be able to stay there and not worry about anything. So I have to arrange things for what I do with things after my mom passes.
how
I don't know.
civilized.
I'm still like beyond touch that they did that. And then my sister, of course, said to me, I hope you're going to leave things to my children afterwards. And I said, of course I'm going to. Who else? Who else is there?
There's nothing wrong with it. It sounds so civilized.
It's amazing.
One last thing, Pat, and then you, because I know Pat had one or two other points. All my friends, when you started with this, Cindie, about there's no art and there's no
there's art. You gave it to me, that art.
My big chill girlfriends, okay, that we all went to grade school together. Now, of course, our families have passed on. Well, one or two of us, when we've talked about estates or the money or a fight or just getting it in writing, One of them cropped up and said, gee, my brother and I didn't never said we buried mom. We didn't worry about it. I said, I don't want to say her name. Honey, I call her honey. Honey, when there's $2 on the table, you both take a buck and walk out of the room. Put 10, $12 million in the middle of that table, and you're going to see how people act.
That's
okay? Not everyone is going to be ethical and charming like Cindie's family.
right.
And that's why, Pat, I tell that story to your statement. Anything that can be written down before people pass on
Right.
is the way to do it. Even if it's an ashtray,
Absolutely.
an
Absolutely.
ashtray from the Hilton and a hat from the, Coachella, I put it in writing.
And say it to somebody else that just handwritten, type it up, or hopefully you can get a parent to dictate to you what it is they want, and it gets submitted somewhere somehow, because otherwise probate, the state will take everything that's yours.
Absolutely right.
So yes, so I am going, in closing, because we have a part 2 show coming up. We're going to come back again next week and talk to Cindie Flannigan and Denise Vivaldo from Women Beyond a Certain Age, about now what are we going to do for our future and our life and the time when we pass. So thank you all so much for listening to Eat Well, Live Well, and Age Well. And for show ideas, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Patricia Greenberg. And you can also email me and get in touch at www.eatwelllivewellagewell.com. Thank you so much for listening. Okay, do you guys want to do a closing?
Yeah, Denise should do a close.
Okay.
Well, Pat and Cindie, thank you so much. I think that this crossover idea with Women Beyond a Certain Age is kind of brilliant. Women beyond a certain age that eat well, live well, age well. I'm liking it. I'm liking it. If you want to reach out to us, go to womenbeyond@icloud.com. Of course, we have a Facebook page. Of course, we have a website. But I have to tell you, we love getting messages from people. We love show ideas. And today's show and the next upcoming show was Pat's idea. And I think it's absolutely brilliant, because we should all be planning for the future.